I promised I would never, I don't know if I promised, but I did once claim that I don't think I would ever make Star Wars content again, just because Star Wars fans are a little, they're passionate. You can say that much. And I get it. It's a long-running franchise that expands many generations, and everyone has their different takes, opinions on which films and shows are the best and are the worst, and which direction they think it should be going. It's a beefy IP. That's the word I could say. But I had these thoughts, and I kind of just wanted to maybe get it out there. I don't know if I'll release it. If you're hearing this, then I guess I decided to release it. But my thoughts are, this isn't necessarily to give any hot takes or anything like that. This is more of a, like, I'm trying to have a discussion or give this thought out that I've been thinking about after finishing Andor, which I'm going to preface in this. I liked Andor. If you didn't like Andor, well, what didn't you like about it? And maybe what I said today might be the reason you don't like it. Who knows? But I had a thought and I couldn't sleep, and I might think about it. And it kind of been brought up once I finished the show. So overall, I'm just going to talk about Andor a little bit as far as it just being a piece of media. I did like Andor. I enjoyed how it was structured, especially with getting these 3-episode drops that was almost like their own like, what's the term I'm looking for? Storylines or anthologies. I don't know what's the term I'm looking for, but something like that. It gave you like this giant story, right? Versus like the first season. The first season was a little more, I guess, linear, or where like you follow episode 1 to what happens at the end, right? This one's more like we want to cover a lot of story in one season, right? And I think for the show it was good, rather than like maybe squeezing it out to like 2 or 3 more seasons, right? I think we got a lot of bang for our buck. I think that's what I can say about it, and I enjoyed it. It was cool. Do I think that sometimes I'm like, man, this is like, I want to go to bed, but I do want to watch all these 3 episodes, right? And maybe that's like only like small gripe is like, I felt like I had to watch all 3 every single Tuesday, right? But I did like that. I like that structure, and I don't know if any more shows are going to do that, and I don't know if any more shows have already done that. But there were a lot of time jumps, right? I liked a lot of the stories that were covered, kind of showing how this empire got to where it is now. And that's the core of it. It is a prequel-like thing, and it kind of shows you how everything fell to place to eventually get to where we all know where this is going, is that the Empire builds the Death Star. We know that. How did they get there? What are the steps they took to get there? And that is an interesting thing to see unfold. But here's the but, right? But as I was watching it, to some degree, it was cool. Like, I was excited. I was like on the edge of my seat. But I got to a point where I felt like I could start predicting things. And the only reason I could predict things is because I know where the story is taking place. I mean, I know where the story is going. I know how this ends. And I have some thoughts or some, what's the word I'm looking for? Prompts, to bring up, and I probably will contradict myself here to like argue against myself, is when I see a show, I see like, Disney or, especially like with these big IPs, Marvel and even like DC, when they have this giant universe that they've created. I think it's especially prominent in like in Star Wars, when they have these stories. I think Star Wars does it the most, actually, because they're telling all these stories in the galaxy, and especially ones that tie into like the main storyline of the battle between like the rebellion and the Empire, is that I already know what's gonna happen. And I think, for normies, right, who don't know what's happening, they could probably watch Andor and be like, I think a normal person could watch Andor and see like this story that is just really good, right? And even me, who I've seen Star Wars films and TV shows and animations, and I can still enjoy it, don't get me wrong, but there were times where like I would be watching it with people, right, and I would make the joke at the end, especially the end of this last episode, what's gonna happen now? What are they gonna do? And the show teases like, oh my god, there's a doom. How are they gonna get out of this? Are they even gonna get out of it? But I feel like it kind of kills it for me, or maybe it might, I don't know if I'm being a Downey Dever about it, that like, I already know how it happens. They find out they're building the Death Star, Luke joins the rebellion, he blows up the Death Star, they bring it back, and he blows it up again. I already know how it ends. I know how it ends. And then, yeah, we can go like, well, technically the First Order comes and takes over, but yeah, I know that Rey defeats Palpatine again when he comes back to life. So like, unless there's always a constant struggle and battle. So I'm like, this story has been going on so long that it's okay. At what point do I'm like, I'm not saying I don't care. It's just that like, and it is cool. Don't get me wrong. It is cool to like see the how it happened, right? But there are times where I guess I get kind of taken out of it because I know what's gonna happen, and maybe that's just me being like lame about it. I guess I don't know. And I think it brings a bigger question of how long can a company milk an IP? I guess, and to argue against myself, I guess technically there are people who read a book and then it becomes a series later, and you know what's gonna happen, but you still get excited for it. Don't get me wrong, I was still excited for Andor, but I guess the difference between that and a show like this is the Star Wars has been going on for so long, you know. I guess the only thing I can say cool about these shows is when they do a show that's maybe a little bit more different, like The Mandalorian. You know, there are people, I know some people have some flaws with that show, but for the most part, I think it's fun, right? That's a different story within the Star Wars universe that I don't know about. You know what I mean? I don't know much about everything that happened with Mandalorian, its history. I mean, you hear bits of parts of it, especially during like the Clone Wars and like Rebels series, right? You get more lore there, you know, with the Darksaber and everything like that. But I don't know if everything where that story is going to take place. I don't know where it goes. And I kind of like seeing stuff like that more. Andor was peak. Don't get me wrong, but I know what's going to happen. And like I said, this is not to say the show is bad or anything like that. I think that is something to take account when these companies and these IPs just like, you know, keep churning out this content. And it makes me think, how much content can they keep making? You know what I mean? At what point is Star Wars over? It's good to just keep going and going, you know? Are we going to just keep making Young Jedi Adventures, you know? or let's shake it up maybe. I don't know. One thing I would say about The Acolyte, which I made a video about that, and that everybody hated that show. One thing I was excited about the show, like it was gonna, you know, take place a further back, you know, a story that like I don't know much about what happened in the olden days. Like, yeah, unless you read like, you know, the Star Wars legends, or that's not necessarily all the maybe things that aren't necessarily canon or not canon, right? You can read those stuff and maybe get some things there. But then like there are people who like, I guess, I wanted to be canon officially within the actual like Lucasfilm universe, right? And I was excited for that. And then I just was kind of like, this show was you know. So I want to see. I would love to see, you know, how Darth Plagueis actually was like, you know. And I guess you could play like video games and stuff like that. But like, you know, it'd be cool to see a show more of that. I know they kind of tease an Acolyte, but that was kind of. I just feel like he was there to like, you know, kind of be like, look, the Darth Plagueis, you know. So am I wrong for saying this? And I'm trying to think of another show that was maybe like this. I don't think House of the Dragon would be a good example, but like I know where that story leads on, and I think this is more of a bigger topic discussion about how, I guess this is kind of just loops to like how there's no original like ideas anymore, and like we gotta keep squeezing all these IPs for all these different stories. And I think some IPs are even scared to start over. Like I think it's very bold that DC is kind of starting over with their IPs, and I think for them the reason they did so is because they weren't doing so well, versus like Marvel that's like, I mean, right now it's not like it's not completely failing, but it's not as good as it used to be. But they're still making some kind of revenue, and they're at least, even if they do bad, they're at least trying to churn pathways. I think Kevin even said something like, "Oh, we don't want to like make shows anymore because I don't want people to have to do their homework to watch a movie, right?" And I think that probably does hurt their film, right? But then also, I guess the counter to that is like, well, I'm one who I watch the shows, and so when I see the movies, it is kind of fun for that. But I do get like that's exhausting to watch all this content, right? And I guess for me, there is some fun to having both of that, or like, oh, I did watch the show and I got the crumbs in the movie, but there is fun to, I think, watching a separate film, a separate piece of media that kind of just stands out on its own. And I think to some degree Andor kind of, but like I know the bigger picture. Most people probably don't. And a lot of people I know who don't really like Star Wars, they'd watch Andor and they can enjoy it for that. But for me, I know where it all goes down. I know that, you know, because it ties into Rogue One. Like it immediately, like I feel like I have to watch Rogue One to, and that's another thing. I feel like after Andor, I feel like I have to watch Rogue One. Too, because I know that's where the story goes.
Inserting this after recording, I did watch Rogue One after Andor, and all I can say is this: it does change the movie for me a little bit. There are certain lines and scenes that I think add more weight and maybe depth to, and there are even certain parts where like I kind of don't care as much because you had a show that focused on like pretty much this one character for so long. And yeah, I feel like I can make an entirely whole separate video of how I felt about that, but it's interesting. Maybe try it for yourself. See how you feel. Back to the regularly scheduled program.
And then after I watch Rogue One, I might as well watch, the first original trilogy. So, because I just watched Revenge of the Sith and then watched Andor, and at the point I just feel like I have to rewatch Clone Wars all over again. So I don't have to, but I just feel like that because just to like remember every little bit and piece of history there. So that's more of a personal problem. Like I said, overall, I liked Andor. I thought it was good. It was great. It was fantastic. It was a show that I was very excited to watch. And there is good things to watch shows like that. Like, I mean, I even enjoyed, like I said, the Clone Wars is like peak. And I'm a Rebels glazer to the day I die. But those are old stuff. It's old stuff that, like, I feel like the Clone Wars, it's the animated show, was one of the first times we actually got to see an expansion of the Star Wars universe, versus like these old IPs. How much more can Star Wars milk this? That's what I want to know. There's going to come a point, I feel like, in history where, like, are you just going to reboot Star Wars? Like, when is that going to happen? I mean, we have many times, like, Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, we're getting a new Superman when we get rebooted. Like, I often wonder if Star Wars will ever get rebooted, or are they going to keep churning out content? And that's just kind of what I'm curious about. And I wonder... I mean, if a series like, I guess, Godzilla can last this long, I guess maybe so. But that's just, I just don't feel like Star Wars is stopping. I don't feel like they're just gonna keep making series, and I wonder at what point they can only milk like that main storyline for so long to the point where they have to make new ones. It makes you wonder: are they gonna make a story that's even beyond like this last trilogy with was it the Rise of Skywalker and stuff like that? Who knows? Or are they gonna start making shows more like Skeleton Crew, which I heard was great, and I didn't hear many people. I actually didn't watch Skeleton Crew. I've been meaning to watch it. I actually hear a lot of people said it was pretty good, even though initially they didn't think it was gonna be good. But people were silent on that. People didn't. I am surprised that I didn't see many people talk about that show. It was in the words of Shrek.
It's quiet. Too quiet.
But I don't know. It's really hard for me to which position I fully stand on, because like I recently just watched Tales of the Empire, not the Underworld. I'm literally about to watch that right now, and yeah, that's cool too. It's cool to see how those kind of stories. But like one thing I can say about those, I think this is maybe a matter of priorities, because when I watched Tales of the the Jedi, you saw characters that you only hear about, and then you finally like get to see them, right? Which is the I feel like I'm a bad fan for not knowing the name. The other Yoda, the other Yoda, you know what I mean. But like, is Andor an established character in the Star Wars universe? Like Darth Plagueis, I know that's an established character that you hear the name drop, right? At least from like the prequel sequels, right? But like, was Andor ever mentioned in the original series? Was he? I don't know. I feel was that character just made for like Rogue One or something like that, or like with the Tales of the Empire? No, there are some characters that have been established already, right, within the universe. So I get excited to watch those. But yeah, overall, I guess it's just more of a discussion of how long can IPs like keep squeezing stuff out, and if they do keep squeezing stuff out, can they make them good? Like I thought Andor was good, and I'm glad that it wasn't milked too much. 2 seasons is, I think, fair to have. And I actually do know people who didn't like Andor, and I'm not ashamed to say I did like it, but I do wonder that are we gonna get like a show that kind of, well, I guess technically, I was about to say, are we getting a show that takes place between like the Return of the Jedi, The Force Awakens, but technically like doesn't like Mandalorian kind of take place in between that? But like, it's not necessarily about the Jedi. So yeah, I'm just interested to see like how many more Star Wars projects are gonna get kicked out. I know we're getting that Darth Maul series, which like, I'll be honest with you, if it's, I don't care if it's a prequel or not, I'm biased. This is where like my biases come out, and everyone should know this. No matter who you talk to about like reviews and stuff like that, we're all biased. I'm gonna say that now. I think we all have biases to some degree, but I'm gonna love that. Like I love Darth Maul. I love his story. I love his arc. I love his entire trajectory, and how he was first introduced with a double lightsaber, and then how he eventually has his demise in like the dunes of Tatooine with Obi-Wan. Like his whole arc altogether is probably one of the best things I've ever seen. I'm glazing Darth Maul. So yeah, I'm just curious to know what people think about how they felt. Are you able to disassociate with the fact that like, look, I know where the story's gonna go. I know where it's gonna go. I mean, I guess an example you could be like maybe Lord of the Rings, like The Hobbit, right? Like what I said, you can give an example of like people reading books, but at what point can we keep making content, like especially like with like I guess an example could be like Rings of Power. Like, okay, if you're making this story about like, oh, what's this person's gonna rise to power, but like I know eventually like Sauron gets defeated, right? So that sometimes takes out of me a little bit, and I try not to kill that fun for me and try to be present in the moment, right? Because there are little pieces of those medias like in Star Wars that, okay, if you're making this canon, I think that's cool. I think it's cool, and maybe these untold stories. I think it is cool to some degree. I guess my only questions I bring up is how long can this go on? And if it keeps going on, is it gonna be good? Does it bother some people? Does it not bother some people? Do you not care? Do you not? Is it one of those like, it's not that deep, bro? So anyways, that's all I really have to say. And like I've said before, I know how passionate Star Wars fans, again, this is not a way to like sit there and talk trash or anything, or have too much of a one way or the other. Just like, it's kind of, let's have a discussion here. Like, what are your opinions? What do you think? And let's be transparent with each other in a nice, positive, diplomatic, honest way, I guess I could say. So, and one final question I want to ask those fans out there: what has been your favorite piece of like recent Star Wars media? Like, is it have been like these like, you know, shorts of like what the Tales of the Underworld and the Empire, you know, or has it been like Mandalorian, which we're getting a movie now apparently? Has it been Andor? Has it been? I actually do know one person who likes the Acolyte. Like, you know, what, or if you just overall just don't like it, or you just OG trilogy, ride or die to the, you know, the day you die, you know, let's just have a fun conversation, like a Reddit forum. Not a great example. Anyways, here's out. Okay, editor's note. I actually just finished Tales of the Underworld, and well, you know, maybe this extra content, maybe they're onto something. Maybe, just maybe. I mean, like, it was pretty neat. It's pretty cool. Like, the story's nice. The story's fun. The last one, we brought him back. Origin story. I mean, it really touched on some topics of like the poverty to criminal pipeline, and then this story between of like two brothers and like ultimate betrayal and trying to find understanding, and like we got space candy, guys. Like, we got space candy. Phenomenal writing. More stuff like this, Star Wars. More stuff like this.